Yeah, which is why I'm thinking that probably something like an inquisitive model would have made more sense for that, where you're
Yeah,
good at perception and stuff.
or maybe you're an archaeologist who also likes to raise the dead.
At which point you'd probably want to be maybe a cleric.
Right. Maybe you are a cleric who is also a paleontologist.
Yeah.
So you research them and you animate the skeleton.
All right, next we have a mechanically speaking, and Alex, do you know what we're mechanically speaking about today?
Mechanics. I forget, actually, now that you just were going to say it. Now I forget what we're going to do.
Now we all of a sudden forgot the topic. So recently I was going through a bunch of like the subclass lists for
Oh,
D&D.
I remember now. Yes, go ahead.
And, there's a lot of interesting kinds of like backstories to why a lot of these subclasses exist. But I kept thinking to myself, like, okay, the regular, like, non-player characters, like the people that actually inhabit your world, where would they fall into this? Like, if you decided to create a character that was a bartender or, was like an archaeologist was the one I kept thinking about.
Right.
Storekeeper or just somebody who swept floors, anything. What would they actually be? Because if you have any kind of a player character, you assume that anyone who is an NPC could essentially get statted out that way too.
Yes.
So yeah, this is what I'm thinking about. Like, what would different professions actually have as classes? Should we even do that, I suppose, but...
So, I remembered that there's a thing for this, and I
Oh.
think it's from 3.5, for D&D at least.
Sure.
Other games, I'm sure they have other ways that you can do stuff like that. And I think 5e has one too, but I couldn't remember offhand.
Sure.
But so D&D 3.5 had a section of the DMG, I think, where it's for NPCs, and essentially it comes down to their non-player classes.
Okay.
These are pretty much just for NPCs or not quite up to snuff as like what we would consider a hero class or an adventuring class.
Mm-hmm.
And so I pulled up here the SRD for NPC classes from 3.5, I believe.
Okay.
And so I have a list of some of the classes that you can find in D&D for non-player characters that don't have traditional class levels.
Okay.
And so, for instance, the first one up on this list is an adept.
Oh.
So I'll read a little bit about this to you.
Sure.
This one goes into, it says some tribal societies or less sophisticated regions don't have the resources to train wizards and clerics, reflecting a lesser knowledge of magic, yet an intriguing combination of arcane and divine skills. The adept serves these cultures as both wise women or holy men and mystical defenders. Adepts can be found in isolated human, elf, dwarf, gnome, and halfling communities, but are most prevalent among bestial, humanoid, and giant species such as orcs, goblins, gnolls, bugbears, and ogres.
Okay.
So the adept, they get a list of their class skills, skill points, because 3.5 had skill points instead of just proficiencies for your skills.
Sure.
And it went into their breakdown for level 1 to 20, for their base stack bonus, fort, ref, will saves, any special things. The adept gets to summon a familiar and gets spells per day, but they get less than, say, your traditional like wizard might get.
Okay.
And even by 20th level, they can only cast 2 5th level spells.
Okay.
As opposed to like a 20th level wizard, which is like, yeah, I'm throwing on like 6th, 9th level spells.
Jeez.
Or whatever they get. But yeah, so it's got like, here it's got their weapon armor proficiency, their spells, their summon familiar, their spell list.
Oh, sure.
And then like religious adept, urban adept. So these guys are your tribal clerics and shamans and things like that.
I see. Okay.
So that's one example. Then you have an aristocrat, which are usually educated, wealthy individuals born into high positions. They're either wealthy or politically influential people in the world, for instance. So it'll give you their skills and all the stuff they get. any. They don't really have a lot. They're just kind of rich, but it's like here's kind of
skill
just
to
how to
have.
stat them out. You know,
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
actually list their hit points on this, which is strange. You'd think you'd have those.
One. They have
Yeah,
one hit point.
And then after that, you've got commoner, which if you
Oh.
want someone who's just kind of pushing a broom, common
Sure.
folk farm the fields, staff the shops, build the homes, and produce the goods in the world around adventurers. They make poor adventurers and should be reserved for everyone who does not qualify for any other class.
Oh. Okay.
So
Generic class.
generic. Then you have your archaeologists that you were talking about.
Yeah.
In this SRD in 3.5 terms, they would probably be an expert.
Okay.
Experts operate as crafts folk and professionals in the world.
Okay.
They normally don't have the inclination or training to be adventurers, but they're capable in their own field, skilled blacksmith, astute barrister. Sorry, not barista.
I was like, oh wow, I actually like this idea.
Canny merchant, educated sage, and the master shipwright would all be experts.
Oh, okay.
The expert could make a PC-worthy class choice, but only for those players willing to create a character focused on something other than traditional adventuring careers.
Oh, okay.
Basically, they're really skilled.
Sure.
There's a Magerite one here, and that's for Eberron, I guess. So
Oh, okay.
it's a magical blacksmith, I guess.
Mm,
And then the last one there is your warrior, which would be like guards and things like that, probably.
sure. Okay.
Instead of giving them like fighter levels.
Yeah.
And the difference here is where a traditional class level, like a fighter or barbarian,
Mm,
is a lot more powerful than even one of these non-player character classes,
sure.
where, again, the 20th level adept
Yeah.
still can't even hold a candle to your equally high level mage or wizard or
Sure.
anything else. So
Yeah.
they're capable as far as NPCs go, but they're not like NPCs that are, I am a 5th level barbarian,
Right.
which would actually pose a moderate threat.
Sure. Sure.
But it's like, I'm a 5th level warrior. It's like, cool, you're like a 2nd level character to me.
Right. Right. As far as I know, I haven't seen anything about that for 5th level, 5th rules.
I did try to Google it really quick because I don't have my DMG is over there serving as backdrop.
Yeah, sure.
But I think there is stuff for commoners and stuff in there. I know in the module I've been playing with you guys, your NPCs that are named do have some stat blocks I can see,
Oh, okay.
and I don't remember what they are, if
Sure.
they have a class or if they're just a person.
Sure.
But yeah, like you can do stuff like that if you want to build a specific, like a really specific NPC and give them a normal class level. Like maybe you want to make a rogue a really interesting character.
Sure.
But I feel like the NPC classes here are generally what you would outline with for maybe less interesting, more generic NPCs,
Sure.
but like to give them a stat block on the fly, where
Mhm.
it's like, yeah, you're fighting an archaeologist with a whip. It's like, oh shit, what do I want to use for that stat block? It's like,
Right.
well, do I want to go through the effort of, say, giving them a class level in,
Sure.
say, rogue, and then you
Yeah.
have to figure out all the class features for it? Or do I want to give them like 5th level expert, so they get 3 attack bonus, their fortitude saving throw is like one reflex and 4 will, and
Mm.
they've proficient in their armor and shields, their light armor and simple weapons,
Sure.
like here's some stuff they have really quick without going into crazy detail.
Got it.
So I think stuff like that is really nice if you need some on the fly NPC generation. Like, oh shit, like I have a guard.
Yeah.
It's like, is it a fighter or is it something else? Or is like, does guard have its own stat block? It's like, guard does not. Sorry, he's elf. He's an orc guard. He's a level 3 warrior.
Sure.
Something like that. It's designed, I think, to be simple
Yeah.
and make them have a bit more flavor than just like generic NPC, but also not be here, make an entire character sheet for this NPC because that's annoying.
Certainly, yeah. Well, you know what they need to do is they need to have like an NPC generator, but do it like those magnet poems, so that you can like throw little stat things on.
I mean, there are
like a
definitely
magnet board.
generators online for that
Sure.
that you can find, which are pretty easy, but
Yeah.
just stuff like this is also really simple. I think it can be handy.
Sure. Now, here's the big thing, though, that I was kind of spawned the whole question for me.
Sure, sorry, I went on a tirade there.
No, but it's good to know that in 3.5 they might have actually thought of something like this. But imagine if we're in that world and you have that character who happens to be the archaeologist who has the whip and everything, and somebody joins the game and they kind of go, oh, hey, that NPC was really cool. I think I actually might want to play that character.
Well,
Now-
then you tell them to get an idea for a better character that's not an NPC.
Yeah, but my thought process is, okay, so let's say you have somebody who did the archaeology thing and they're out there dusting bones. They're like the characters at the beginning of Jurassic Park, right? They're out there dusting the bones off and scaring kids with the claw. And, okay, so now when I'm trying to figure out what makes the most sense for them, what do I think that they would actually be? Am I thinking that because they're more of a scholar that they would make sense as like a wizard? Or am I thinking that if they're athletic, would they make more sense as something like a rogue, maybe? Like, if it was like an inquisitive sort of character?
I think it would
kind of
just,
thing?
I think what you'd more focus on necessarily was your background.
Yeah.
In that case, in 5e, again, as the example we're using here,
Mm,
where your background, say maybe you are a scholar as a background,
mm,
but it's like, all right, well, do I use magic or do I use brains? Or maybe I use divine stuff. You know,
Sure.
would you pick whatnot? Maybe
Yeah.
you're good at tracking these animals down or these creatures down. So you'd be like, I want
Right.
to play a ranger who's actually just good at like that stuff. Knowledge, nature.
Right.
I think you'd break it down based on like build the concept with your background and then pick what class might fit best.
Sure. Because I think that what makes me wonder if that was rules as intended is that usually the backgrounds are something you pick after you've already picked your, like, class.
And you
And
don't
everything.
have to do it that way, of course. You
Sure.
can go and say, all right, well, I want to do my background and stuff first and then
Sure.
pick my class. Because
Yeah.
then it's like, again, build out the concept and
Mm,
then fit your class to the concept to be like, okay, so I'm an archaeologist. I'm going with scholar background. I'm going with these different like ideals, bonds, flaws, traits, etc.
sure.
Then pick your race, and then maybe pick the class from that.
Sure.
You can do it backwards. It's a little different because then you're like, all right, well, I also think you should do backgrounds first because you get a lot of skills from the background.
Yeah, you get some
for
good stuff from
instance-
backgrounds, yeah.
And I think if you do it that way, you go, all right, I've got these skills, and then I get all the class things, and you can choose from the class things after you've done that. And it helps you from going back and looking at it going, wait, did I have this or that? Because there's a lot of options.
Oh, sure. Sure.
I think for, like, if you're doing an Indiana Jones type character,
Sure.
it might be a rogue who
Yeah.
specializes in skills, more so skills, less so murder.
Yeah, which is why I'm thinking that probably something like an inquisitive model would have made more sense for that, where you're
Yeah,
good
or-
at perception and stuff.
Or maybe you're an archaeologist who also likes to raise the dead.
At which point you'd probably want to be maybe a cleric.
Right. Maybe you are a cleric who is also a paleontologist.
Yeah.
So you research them and you animate the skeleton and then you get it to a museum and you
yeah.
like just put it in the position you want, and then you release it, and you just keep it there.
Right.
Maybe you find a way to do that. Maybe you can. I don't know if there's a spell commune with undead. I know there's speak with animals.
Yeah, speak with animals.
Actually,
like
I
that.
think there is a spell.
Oh, I think
that
there is
lets
a speak
you-
with the dead too.
Yeah, lets
There
you
is a
speak with
spell.
it. So maybe you could learn about. Maybe you could be like, all right, I'm a cleric who wants to find out more about these dead creatures and like learn about
Sure.
them by communing with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Interesting concept. Could be fun.
Yeah. I think it's like in the other realm of this, I kept thinking to myself, like, what leads characters to say, man, I guess I'm a sorcerer now? Like, what was the backstory that led you there? I can't imagine that it's just all people that are like, well, I have magical abilities, I guess I'll just go into this profession. Like, I have to imagine that they did something beforehand that led them to the point where it made sense for them to go into that.
Yeah, I mean, sorcerer as an example obviously is interesting because if you're playing a sorcerer, it means your bloodline is where you get your magic power from.
Sure.
So you're born with that ability, which also would be interesting to have someone with a sorceress bloodline that is playing a different class.
Yeah.
Maybe, so in that case, what you might do as a character concept, I know it's not completely on an NPC point, it's fine, we're tangential, it works.
Right.
Maybe what you do is you do a first level sorcerer,
Mm-hmm.
and then your second level is in another class.
Got it.
So it's like maybe I have a little bit of innate sorceress ability, but like maybe I didn't really. That's not what I'm doing with my life.
Right. That's
Maybe
not really
I
my
am-
thing.
Maybe I'm a fighter who actually just has a sorceress bloodline.
It would be interesting, actually, if you started off all of these characters with a class level that made sense for them, and then, based on their backstory, took them in a different direction entirely. So, like,
Yeah.
their first level is different entirely from the rest of the levels that they take. So,
Well, yeah, that's always interesting. Multi-classing can present a plethora of fun opportunities
sure.
and background stuff as well. For instance, Hephaestus, we've gone over before on the show and on the old show, where he was a Dragonborn druid.
Mm.
But based on character backgrounds and what we decided for him, and then stuff throughout the storyline, I was like, well, maybe he's gonna go barbarian
Mm-hmm.
because just like you, he gets red like his rage. You are very red right now.
I am so red. Why am I red now? Stop being red. I don't know.
I assume it's a web page you have up.
Maybe. 1 second. I'm gonna see if I can stop being red.
Nathan just turned red.
There.
Hey, there you go. I don't know what you did.
I don't know.
Anyways, welcome back to not being so angry.
I was in
Because
rage mode. I went.
Yeah.
That's how I became a barbarian.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things. It's like, all right, well, maybe there's. I think actually an interesting way to do that could be, say, make a character concept and then pick a class feature
Mm-hmm.
that is based on your experiences beforehand, but not the class you want to play.
Mm.
So maybe you want to play a sorceress bloodline and get the bloodline trait, but
Mm.
play a ranger
Oh, okay.
or play a fighter. So that would be an interesting, albeit maybe powerful way to augment a character in a different way than just say giving them a different class level.
Sure.
You know,
Sure. Okay. That's worthwhile.
it'd be interesting. So then I could be like, all right, Nathan, you are playing a bard, but you've got you're from a nomadic tribe of barbarians.
Got it.
Yeah, maybe you've got the class rage feature as if you are a barbarian.
That seems OP.
I mean, you can't cast spells when you're raging, so
I
I think
maybe I can.
maybe. No, you can't. Rage
should.
doesn't let you cast spells.
Maybe mine does.
Anyways, so I think there's definitely ways you can do that. Obviously, talk to your games master or your dungeon master about ways you can tweak things like that. For instance, Hephaestus turned out to be a lycanthrope.
There's that.
It's not something I came up with during character creation. We came up with it through playing the character, but we talked it out and figured out what it would be like and how it could tie into the story. And it was like, all right, cool. He's a lycanthrope, but I'm not going to abuse it because holy shit, lycanthropes are powerful.
Yeah.
Stuff like that is interesting. Fun character concepts are always really interesting to go with, even if it makes them a bit more powerful. I think with
Sure.
a good player who isn't going to abuse the shit out of that,
Sure.
it's fine. And
Yeah.
even then, if they do abuse the crap out of it, it's like you can pull them aside and just be like, hey, you're kind of using that one thing a little bit heavily, like for reasons that the story doesn't necessarily warrant it, perhaps.
Mhm.
Just solid communication, I think, works for that. So
Fair enough. Fair enough. I have also gone back into rage mode, so I'm just staying in rage forever. It's fine.
red like my rage.
I keep wondering that, like, who comes in, like, to say, hey, you know what? I really need to be like a barbarian as a class. Like, unless you're like actually of a tribe that qualifies for it. I don't know who thinks to themselves, well, I happen to be a bartender and that makes me particularly angry and I like to throw punches, so I'm going to be a barbarian as a
We
class.
could go into barbarian as a class thing sometime if we wanted to, but like maybe
Sure.
you're just a fighter who's pretty angry.
You're just an angry fighter.
Like, you don't have to play a tribal barbarian.
Sure.
You could say be a city dwelling member who's a barbarian class. Basically, you're a rage fighter.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I'm just kind of. I wear lighter armor and I use big weapons and I just get really mad and smash things.
You're the Hulk. You are just the Hulk.
Every time you rage, your clothing rips off.
Oh my! And you turn green,
Yeah, and you turn green with envy, or like you, red like my rage.
red like your rage. Yeah, maybe you're a half orc, and you just get greener when you turn into.
Maybe you're a dwarf, and every time you drink, you rage.
That's true. That's true. I like this. You could be a half orc and a half dwarf.
No, that's
Yes.
weird, and they hate each other.
Which is why it would be amazing. At some point, we'll talk. There is actually supplements that they did. I want to say it was an elf and an orc had a little baby or something, which was
Sure.
where you can actually just choose different parental heritages for your character.
Yeah.
But at any rate, so question that I'd like to ask to everybody else is: have you ever thought about the idea of a NPC getting a backstory for them and what they might actually be if they were a class? And it doesn't have to be limited to just D&D, obviously. If there's another system that you use, maybe in Vampire the Masquerade, try to figure out what clan you would want to belong to. If you ended up being an actual barista instead of a barrister. If you were a barista in that world, what clan would you be? Probably Brewhut. But the point is,
A barista of blood.
no, you know what? No, it'd be a Toreador, wouldn't it?
I don't know.
It would be a Toreador.